So our third mode is clock mode. And clock mode is another way of setting different times when a queue will fire. The difference between clock mode and different interval mode is that different interval mode is a relative time delay mode. So as I said, the time a queue fires is relative to whenever the last queue fired. Clock mode is an absolute time mode. And what this really means is that you're setting the exact time when a queue will fire after the trigger input pulse. So for example, we could set Q1 to fire at 1 second, Q2 to fire at 2 seconds, Q3 to fire at 4.5 seconds, Q9 to fire at 6 minutes, 35.55 seconds. So it really does provide a huge amount of flexibility in when you want your queues to fire. You can also, of course, set the queues to fire at the same time, or you can set them to fire out of order if you want to as well. Like the other time interval modes, you can save and recall up to 10 shows. So if you want to enter some time delays for some common things that you do, you can put more time delays over the top of them, and then at a later date you can simply go back. You can load the show in again with just a few button presses, and it's there, it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm now going to quickly show you how to enter some time delays into clock mode and how to recall a show. So I'm going to press OK to go into clock mode. I'm going to press OK to go into setup, and in very much the same way as the other time modes, you simply select which digit you want to increment. So for example, we'll set Q1 to fire at 1 second, Q2 to fire at 2 seconds, Q3 to fire at 2.5 seconds, and some queues to fire at 0 seconds, so instantly after the trigger input pulse, perhaps Q11 at 4 seconds, and Q12 perhaps before all the other queues at 0.03 seconds. And Q13 we can fire at perhaps 0.06 seconds. Once we reach the end of those delays, we get the option to save a show again. I'm just going to select no because we don't want to save this. So we're now ready to simulate it to see if we've entered the correct time delays. Just like all the other modes, you can press run and you can see on the screen exactly when the queues are firing. So let's go ahead and actually fire the queues so we can see it on the LEDs. I'm going to arm the unit as before. It's obvious that it's armed. I'll use our trigger box. I'm going to press to see if we've got continuity and trigger the unit in 3, 2, 1. So you can see that now all the queues have fired. Clock mode really allows you to get quite creative in when you want your queues to fire. So I've set up a center out sweep using this unit, and I've saved it. So I'm just going to go back into clock mode, select load show, and I've saved it in memory location 1, which has an asterisk next to it to show that there's a show saved there. Press OK to load the show, and that's the time delays from clock mode in there, ready to go. Using the OK button, we can cycle through them all to check them, we can edit them at any time, and we can save them again or save them in a different location. We can press the run button as before, we can just make sure that that looks OK. So once again, I'm going to arm the unit and we're going to fire a center out sweep. So the way I've set this up is that I've set Q6 and 7 to fire at time 0, Q5 and 8 to fire 0.2 seconds after the trigger input pulse, Q4 and 9 to fire 0.4 seconds after the trigger input pulse, so on and so forth. So what we have is a center out sweep with 0.2 seconds between each queue. So I'm going to trigger the unit in 3, 2, 1, and there you go. You can see we had a center out sweep. I set Q13 to fire at the same time as Q1 and 12, so you could use this if you wanted to trigger another sweep or another unit to do something else.